My friends over at Imprint sent me some things a couple weeks back, and it took me a little while to get into all this because it's just a lot of content to cover and to really do it justice. The first thing was a TV show, and then there was 2 movies that had some awesome film history, plus a documentary, and then another movie. And before I dive into all that, when they shipped, the box came super damaged, and that was from my post office. I guarantee you, because I get more damaged mail than I ever have living here, and so I'm glad to be moving soon. But as I opened the box, everything came perfectly wrapped, super safe, and there's 0 damage. But as we dive in, the very first thing that I was super excited about was Bewitched, season 5 and 6. Now, if you're familiar with Bewitched at all, this is the story of the 2 Dicks that played Darren. And in season 5, Dick York ends his career as Darren, and season 6 we are introduced to Dick Sargent playing Darren. And as a kid, I watched a lot of these reruns, and I knew of that. I definitely saw some Dick Sargent episodes, but as I've been rewatching all these episodes, I was familiar with a lot of all those early episodes. But as I watched season 6, it felt like a very fresh. Like, I didn't recall any of those episodes. And I know I've seen some of the Dick Sargent stuff. So it's just, I think maybe when I was watching all the reruns as a younger boy, that they probably just played a lot of those earlier episodes. But this one here, I love how they do this. Now, this one is the number 15 in their television series line. And so if you're trying to collect all of them, it is numbered on the spine. But as the big chunky boxes always come with these cards, you just remove it, and then you're introduced to some beautiful artwork usually, and there's something usually written up on top here. So I save these cards, I stick them right inside. And then the one thing I love about Imprint is not only are you getting this rigid, big, chunky box set, but then each season has its own case and its own artwork. But then these Bewitched sets, they come with a nice hardcover book, and this is story information. It's got all kinds of information, some stuff about the episodes, but it also has photographs and stuff from the show, and it's just really nice to have. Makes a perfect coffee table book and something to pick up every now and again to check it out, but also for reference. Now, if you didn't grow up with this show, you're not familiar with it, it is nice to have a lot of this stuff. And, it's not for everybody. This is a bigger collector set, and I really enjoyed it. So this is something that I'm going to read it. It's probably going to sit on the coffee table for a little while, but then after that, it's going to go back in here, and it'll be just for reference, just to keep it protected. But as we dive into season 5, I watched all these episodes. A few of them have commentary episodes. It's a beautiful transfer, just like the other seasons. And I don't believe, as I recall, I don't believe at all that this was done by Imprint. I think this was done by the studio. And so it is a beautiful transfer. I had no issues with any of the episodes, and they played just fine. Now, being an older show, it is in that 4:3 aspect ratio, so you're going to have the black bars on the sides of your television. But that's how I grew up with it, so I love it. Here's the artwork on the discs. And then when you take the disc out, on both the front and the back cover, it has the season information, the disc, the number of the episode, and the title of the episode. So you have that for reference as well. And I love that they do that, because the studios used to put in little cards that did that, and then they kind of stopped doing it. But the fact that it's printed on the other side, it's just a wonderful touch. Now, as we get into season 6, here's where we are introduced to Dick Sargent playing Darren, and it's something I knew and I expected. And you can see it reflects in the artwork, the different faces and different caricatures. But as you dive in, my daughter didn't notice. So we were watching that one. She didn't know it. I had to point it out to her that it was a different Darren. She was just so glued to the screen and just enjoying these. And so it's been a pleasure to bring these to my kid and just introduce this. And so, yeah, I'm glad they sent this over. Now, if you'd like to pick up your own, I will link all this stuff down below, and you can pick it up and enjoy these yourself. Now, the next two I was interested in because I don't have a lot of Westerns in my collection, and so all of these are Westerns, and this one here, and now this is not a big chunky box set. This is the other style that Imprint does, and so there's a slipcover, and then the disc comes out. So this is a Paul Newman movie, HUD. Now this one here is spine number 432, but this is a movie that I knew nothing about, but Paul Newman, trying to get more of his movies under my belt, and very enjoyable. I like that era of movies, and as we dive into this, I wouldn't classify it as a traditional Western, but it comes up as a contemporary Western, whatever that means. But this one here, it's about ranchers and the cattlemen, and you have HUD, whose dad is a cattleman, and he's older, but HUD has a chip on his shoulder. He's a womanizer, he's a fighter, I don't know what else he is, but it says here, a young Texas rancher whose only interests are fighting, drinking, and womanizing finds himself at odds with a respectable cattleman father. And at the very beginning of the movie, they're looking for him. He needs to get back to the ranch because his dad has an issue with one of the cows, and there's a disease, and they're going to have to put down the entire herd, which puts the entire ranch out, and they're going to lose that money for the season, and it's kind of a big deal. And you have the dynamics of the family, and the father doesn't approve of HUD's lifestyle, and it's a whole thing. But there is love amongst that entire family, and you see it throughout, but the dynamics that are played out are just amazing. So I really enjoyed this one. And like I said, it's not a traditional Western where you're having horse chases and gunslinging and bank robbing and all that, but this is just, I thought, a really enjoyable movie, something I'll be looking forward to watching it again. And you have the picture here, which I thought was top notch. The choice, they have his father, and then you have HUD, played by Paul Newman, in the background. You can see just from there his stance, everything about it. He has that chip on his shoulder, and it plays pretty much throughout the entire film. And then the next thing was something I was a little bit familiar with, but not wholeheartedly. So the movie Fade In, starring Burt Reynolds, it was something that was put out on Blu-ray before. I was trying to get it because I'm trying to get all the Burt Reynolds films, or at least watch them all. And Blue is something I never heard of, starring Terrence Stamp. Apparently, both movies were filmed at exactly the same time, and what I recall from the commentary on one of the discs, somebody was saying that was the first time that had ever been done by a studio, filming two movies exactly at the same time. The reason they did that was Fade In is a movie about making a movie, and the movie that they were making in the movie Fade In was Blue. So there's several scenes that are spliced in from Blue, and all of a sudden you're looking at the camera crew and the people that are in Fade In, and then all of a sudden Terrence Stamp is there, and you have the scenes from the movie, and then you have the crane and the camera, and it's just interesting. But what it was not these were filmed, I think, both in 1968, but Fade In had a trouble production because they didn't know how to sell it. It wasn't a traditional romantic movie, it wasn't a Western, it wasn't a documentary, but it was all those things kind of rolled into one. So they shelved the movie to 1973, and then after, I think it was Deliverance came out, then you had Burt Reynolds had a little bit of star power, a name. They put this out on TV, and so then that's how people saw this movie. And I think people kind of forgot about Blue. This is the very first time it had ever been put out on Blu-ray. And Fade In is something that you just have the Burt Reynolds name, so it's just something that I think more people would have just searched out anyway. But as you go through in these films, and then it also includes this documentary. It's listed as a movie, but it's about the director for Blue. But as I was watching these, Blue was the first one, Terrence Stamp, and it's a Western. You have, so Terrence Stamp's character, he's not sure if he's raised by Mexicans, whatever, but he's part of this gang, and he gets hurt, and then he stays with these people. They help him out. He gets healed, but then he kind of wants to stay. He wants to leave his gang. He wants to stay. He also shows that he's willing to put in a little work around the farm to, earn his keep. But then there's that dichotomy of falling in love with the girl, staying there, getting away from the gang and the crime, quitting all that stuff, but then falling back in with his old gang when they come back to pick him up. It says, a Mexican bandit falls for a beautiful American woman and decides to leave his life of crime and settle down with her. When his former gang comes back for him, he finds himself torn between his love for the woman and the loyalty of his fellow gang members. And as far as movies go, this is just a slow burn Western. It was really enjoyable, beautifully shot, and I was not familiar with the director at all. So this was my first experience, and after watching the documentary about it, which is titled Cruel, Unusual, and Necessary, he's able to show emotion and stuff that it just doesn't come up in modern cinema. And so this was just, for me, enjoyable for that aspect of it, because sometimes life isn't as perfect as everybody wants it to be, and you see it that way. So that I enjoyed. Now, as far as movies go, I do like Westerns. It's just, it was never huge in my wheelhouse. So this one here, I don't think it's going to get a yearly watch, but as I watched fade in, I'll watch this a lot more often. I really enjoyed it, but it is odd because, like I said, it is all three of those things kind of crammed together. It's a love story, it's a Western, but it's also kind of not really a documentary, but it's about them making the film Blue. And so it's a weird part of cinema history, and so I'm glad to have it. But as you watch this movie, Burt Reynolds, he's a cowboy that gets hired to work on this movie set. Barbara Loden's character, she's the film editor, and she falls in love with him. And that's also the way it's written. Like when you read the blurb about this, she falls in love with him. But by the end of the movie, you can see that Burt Reynolds wears his heart on his sleeve, and he fell in love with her as well. It says right here, a young cosmopolitan city woman surprises herself and everyone else when she finds herself falling for a handsome and charismatic ranch hand while both are working on location on a film shoot. It was just fun, and the scenes between Burt Reynolds and Barbara Loden were absolutely fun. But then I could see where Paramount wasn't sure what to do with this film, because when they cut over to the scenes from Blue, they're rough because it's them filming a film being filmed, and so they're rough and it's spliced in. It's not the same. So everything's nice and clean with Burt Reynolds and Barbara Loden and the characters that are in this film, but then they cut over and you see like a rough image of Terrence Stamp, or you see the horses running through. It's just a difference in quality in film. And so I'm not sure if it's the quality of the film that they used, or the cameras, or just how they finished it in editing, that type of stuff. But man, really enjoyed this one, and it's something I'm going to revisit a lot more. This one is Spine number 431. And then here's this. This was an interesting watch. And it's Cruel, Unusual, Necessary, The Passion of Silvio Narazzano. And this is, it's listed as a movie, but it's a bit of a documentary, but it's interesting enough. And so you have this, love this shot of the director and Terrence Stamp from Blue right there, but it covers a few films and talks about how his filmmaking style and how he was able to pull the different emotions and different things and from each scene. And it was just, I don't know, like sometimes the worst is the best. And right here it says, perhaps at first glance, the filmography of Silviano Narazzano appears unremarkable thanks to his sleeper hit Gregory Girl from 1966. He's known largely as a one-hit wonder director. Upon closer inspection, however, likely no other filmmaker used cinema as effectively to exercise personal demons in ways both ugly and beautiful. And that's what I was kind of pointing out in Blue. Like, you know, it might not be for everybody. A Western might not be for you, but it is a beautifully shot movie, and the emotions and stuff, it feels real and raw. And I guess, I don't know, I think I might have been taken aback because you don't really get that in a lot of modern cinema. But I highly recommend all these films. And you know, if the Westerns are for you, these are no-brainers. But the Bewitched TV show, absolutely love it. It's just nostalgia for me, so that always comes as a high recommend. Good, clean, wholesome family fun. Let me know in the comments down below if you're going to pick up any of these, what you think of these films. You're going to want to check out this video right here. And with that, remember to watch a movie today, and I'll catch you guys next time.